Hey everyone, welcome back to the Morning Grind presented by rotogrinders.com. I'm your host, Stevie TPFL. It's a beautiful April 15th, Friday afternoon here, and a lot of baseball on the slate. A ton of baseball, actually. I think we got a 14-game night slate, one early game, Colorado at Chicago, which we'll touch on a little bit, but with this massive slate, it's always nice to get a second opinion. So I'm bringing in my cash game specialist, one of the best players in the business. It's Mike Petta, Hoop 2410. How you doing, my friend?
Doing well. Happy to be here. Like you said, full slate, essentially. This is one of the first full slates because a lot of the games have been broken up throughout the first couple weeks here due to weather issues. But 14 games, it's loaded with a lot of pitching, some elite offenses as well, and it is going to be a lot of fun, no doubt about it.
Massive amount of good pitching on the slate, which is always great for, just the edge and fantasy baseball in general. It's just nice to have a massive slate and then there be 4, 5, 6, 7, pitchers that we're going to like here on the slate. Yeah. So it's nice in that aspect. But before we get rolling here, I just want to touch on something real quick. It's not going to take too long, but I just want to touch on it. We're running a Grinders only MLB promo on Fantasy Draft for their Fantasy Draft $22 tournament on Friday. If you go to the forums, it's pinned at the top. All you have to do is put your name in the form, and the first place guy out of Roto Grinders members is going to get a Fantasy Draft Nike backpack, a Fantasy Draft t-shirt, and a Roto Grinders t-shirt. And then 2nd through 10th, we'll get a Fantasy Drafts t-shirt or a hat, and then a Roto Grinders t-shirt as well. So top 10 people getting some swag here. If you're already planning on playing that tournament, might as well throw your name into the hat. If you weren't planning on playing it, Fantasy Draft actually has a pretty good baseball product, and I like it a lot. Hoop, I don't know if you've played over there this season.
Haven't played this season. I've definitely been on the site and checked it out. It's one of the up-and-coming sites, and definitely check it out. There's nothing better than basically a free opportunity to make some money. If you lose, you're getting your money back. So no reason to not give it a shot.
Yep, and then if you haven't signed up, make sure you sign up through the Roto Grinders link so you get the incentives picks and then access to the incentives for Fantasy Draft. So check that out. I just figured it was a really cool promo that they're putting up, and I wanted to talk about it. But we're here to talk some baseball, and it's a pretty good slate, so we're going to jump right into it today. We're going to start with this one game in the afternoon. The sites do have a couple all-days tournaments, so we'll touch on this real quick. It's Colorado at Chicago. Kyle Hendricks, Chad Bettis pitching against each other. I want nothing to do with either one of these pitchers. I think if you're playing the all-day slate, there's so many options at the night games, but might target some hitters here. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I definitely would want to target some hitters. The only issue I have is if you're playing the tournaments, I think it's just best to fade the game in general because if it's an all-day slate, the ownership levels on these guys are going to be driven way, way up, which makes the fade, I think, the right play.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. In cash games, though, the one thing that I find the hardest to kind of project in lineups is catcher. Yeah. So a guy like maybe Miguel Montero, if he's in the lineup here in this early slate at Wrigley, it's a good matchup against Chad Bettis. Your catcher is going to be playing. The rest of you could project pretty much the rest of the lineup. So, that's the one name. And then we want to mention that Charlie Blackmon went on a 15-day DL because of his toe. That's kind of massive for this Colorado offense. But if I had to take somebody here, it'd be Miguel Montero.
Yep.
And then maybe a guy like Chris Bryant. Bettis, had those reverse splits working to hitters' favors last year. And this could be a good matchup for Chris Bryant.
Yeah, I like him. I actually like a lot of these batters for cash games. Like I said, the reason I'd fade him in tournaments is simply due to the fact the ownership level is going to be really high. In cash games, I like Zobrist. He's way too cheap on FanDuel. He's 3.1K tomorrow. I think he's definitely a play. Fowler is also a guy I like quite a bit, and even Jason Hayward, just to go along with the guys that you mentioned, and throw Rizzo in the mix too. Can't forget about him. So I think all those guys are phenomenal cash game plays if you're playing the all-day slate in tournaments. I think they're great fades because with this being the single early game, the ownership level is going to be extremely high in these guys, which makes them all great fades.
Yeah, and then real quick on the Colorado side of things, Hendricks is a guy that struggled against lefties last year, 343 WOBA against lefties. So maybe a guy like Ben Paulson who should move out into the outfield here. Not getting regular starts, but here's going to be a chance for a guy like Paulson to prove that he should be in the lineup. And take advantage of the Charlie Blackmon injury here. So I like Paulson at 2,800. And then Cargo is Cargo. It's Wrigley.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and definitely he's in play. Paulson, like you said, and DJ LeMahieu is a guy that led off today. So if he leads off, I haven't had a chance to look at his price. I'll get that pulled up at some point here. If he's leading off and has a nice price, he's a guy that we can consider as well.
LeMahieu is 3,200 on FanDuel, so good price for leadoff hitter.
Yeah.
All right, let's swing it on into this massive late slate that we got going here. We're going to start it off with the Brewers visiting the Pirates, Jimmy Nelson against Jeff Locke. With all these pitching options on the slate, it's going to be tough to target maybe some of these lower tier guys. Jimmy Nelson, Jeff Locke really don't stand out to me. What's your thoughts here?
Yeah, and I mean, no thank you in any format. The Pirates are a pretty good team at home. So I really don't want anything to do with Jimmy Nelson, and Jeff Locke just doesn't have the strikeout upside to really target him. So I just don't think you can really consider either of these guys in tournaments. I think there's a couple big name pitchers here that are elite tournament options, which we'll get to later. So don't see the upside in either of these guys. I mean, it's really hard to target a Jimmy Nelson or a Jeff Locke when we have Kershaw, Bumgarner, Sale, just to name a few of the big name guys going on the slate.
Yeah, so let's talk about the Brewers bats here against Jeff Locke. They're visiting at, Pittsburgh here. Not the greatest ballpark, but not one of the worst ballparks in baseball for hitters. And good matchup here with Locke. What's your thought on some of these righties here for Milwaukee?
Interesting plays, definitely tournament plays. I would not target these guys in cash games, but I mean, obviously the first name that comes to mind is Ryan Braun. Gets the righty-lefty matchup, a guy that's hit left-handed pitching extremely well throughout his career. So I think he's a really interesting tournament option. Will be less than 10% owned and has massive upside. Chris Carter should bat fourth or fifth today. 2 home run upside. It's pretty simple. He strikes out a ton and he hits home runs. So, that's kind of ideal for GPP. So those are the two guys that kind of come to mind. And Lucroy, I think, would be an interesting catcher play. His price is fair, so I wouldn't mind him either.
Yeah, don't really need to touch on anything else outside the guys that you said. Maybe Domingo Santana, if he bats leadoff, he's only 3,000, lefty-righty matchup as well. Yeah. Got his first home run of the season, I think, 2 days ago. So might be an interesting option there. I love targeting leadoff hitters, so gets the split advantage. Locke not going to overpower anybody. And the one thing that we're going to pick on the Brewers a lot this year is with right-handed pitching. They don't have a lot of lefty bats outside of Gannett. So, outside of Scooter, this is a team that you're not going to want to target too much against left-handed pitching. So that's why I don't like Locke. And then looking at the Pirates here, this is a good matchup with Jimmy Nelson. Nelson, a guy that has some strikeout upside, but he really struggles against left-handed bats.
Yeah, absolutely. And problem being for this matchup is David Freese will continue to bat in that 3-hole for some damn reason that I cannot figure out. It literally makes no sense. Well, Gregory Polanco is batting 6th. I mean, it's the dumbest lineup construction, I think, in Major League Baseball right now. David Freese batting 3rd against right-handed pitching. The dude that I was watching the Tigers game the other day here, and they said literally, I mean, the Pirates didn't sign this guy until like middle of March. I mean, he was out of baseball, didn't have a job, and the Pirates come along and sign him, and they're locking him into the 3-hole. The dude's atrocious against righties, and they have like adequate batters. So, it really puts a damper on the entire lineup overall. The overall expectation for this offense takes a hit with David Freese batting 3rd. That being said, I think you can obviously target Andrew McCutchen. He's another outfielder, low-owned. Good matchup, not afraid of the righty-righty situation there. Polanco gets a poor lineup spot, has some upside. Marte. So I think a lot of these guys, good for tournaments. I really wouldn't touch them in cash, though.
Yeah, I agree. One guy that, if you're not playing on FanDuel, if maybe you're playing on a site like DraftKings, John Jaso's outfield eligibility on DraftKings, batting in the leadoff spot, still pretty cheap over there. Yeah. And then other sites that you don't have to use up your first base spot on him. So I don't like the fact that you have to play him on first base at FanDuel, but on other sites. And then, like we said, Polanco in the 6th spot, probably going to be a low-owned tournament option. I think he's in play as well. Washington at Philadelphia, Joseph Ross going up against Jeremy Hellickson, and Ross looked good in that first start, and Hellickson has looked, pretty decent in his first 2 starts to start the year. What's your thoughts on these two guys?
Interesting options, really interesting. If I'm going to go with one, I'm definitely going to side with Ross. I mean, the Phillies offense, I think, is not one to be afraid of by any means. They have basically one potent bat in Franco. Outside of him, there's just not much to be afraid of. So if I'm going with one, it's definitely Ross. Hellick's an interesting situation. A guy, kind of got knocked around the last couple seasons. Now pitching really well. Really small sample size, so. I don't think I can target him until I see this continue over the course of a few more starts. Just, two start sample size, way too low for me. So Ross, I have some interest in. I think he's an interesting option. I think more so on sites where you start two starting pitchers opposed to one. But outside of that, it's definitely Ross for me.
I agree. I like Ross here. I think he's a really good tournament option. Like you said, not a lot to worry about here with the Philadelphia Phillies. I really think it comes down to Franco and Herrera. Those are the only two guys that I would even start from this team. So it's definitely a team that I'd like to pick on. But Hellickson, like you said, small sample size. And the one thing that he did struggle with last year was left-handed bats. And he's going to have to face quite a few lefties here in Bryce Harper, Daniel Murphy at the top of the order here. It's going to be tough for this Hellickson guy.
Yeah, going to be definitely probably his toughest matchup so far this season. One other guy I wanted to note for the Phillies is Cesar Hernandez, 2.3K on FanDuel. If you're paying up for a guy like Clayton Kershaw, I think he's a fine option at second base.
Yeah, always he's at the top of the order. Yeah. He's really cheap. Second base is not a position that you necessarily have to pay up for all the time. So I definitely agree there. Now, looking at Washington, I mentioned Harper. I mentioned Murphy. We don't have to talk about those guys too much. They're in a good spot. If you want to play them, they're in good spots. Taylor is still batting in the leadoff spot, 2,300. Hellickson actually allowed almost a 34% hard contact rate to righties last year. This might give Taylor a cash game eligibility.
Yeah, definitely. 2.3K, I think you can definitely consider him a guy, capable of stealing multiple bases. So if he gets on base once, he has the opportunity to basically pay off his price tag. So I like him at 2.3K. Another guy to add to the list of potential punts if you're going to pay all the way up at pitcher.
Yep, agreed there. Is anybody else you want to touch on? Washington, Zimmerman, Worth? They really don't do much for me.
Yeah, I mean, I think like Bryce Harper will be pretty low owned in tournaments. I know you had talked to him, but I think he'll be lower owned today. Anytime you have these big name pitchers, these big bats are tough to fit in, so it's going to drive down the ownership level a little bit. So I like him quite a bit in tournaments.
All right, Seattle visiting the Yankees here. Cervino against Nathan Carnes. Cervino is an interesting option. Kid has a lot of electric stuff. Gets a pretty decent matchup here, but the one thing you don't want to do is target pitchers against left-handed bats in Yankee Stadium, and the Yankees have a bunch of lefties. So Seattle, on the other hand, they have a bunch of lefties as well. So I don't think I want either one of these pitchers here.
Yeah, no thanks. I think there, once again, we have a lot of really good top-end pitchers. So if you want to get crazy at pitcher and get a low-end guy, I think you can get someone with much higher upside than either of these guys. So I'm passing in all formats, definitely on both these guys.
All right, let's talk about the visiting bats here, Seattle. Trust me, guys, we're going to talk about pitching. It's just figures that the first few games here, there's not a lot to talk about. But let's talk about some of these Seattle bats. Robinson Cano off to a good start this season. I think he's a guy you definitely have to look at here.
Yeah, Cano, the potential here for the old revenge dong, I guess, back at I guess you could take that a lot of ways, but back here at Yankee Stadium. So I like him quite a bit, no doubt about that. I think Kyle Seager's another guy that's definitely in play. You can even take a look at Nelson Cruz, gets a righty-righty matchup, but this is a very favorable ballpark for pitchers. So, he's a guy that you could definitely can consider as well. And anyone else that really works their way to the top of the lineup here for the Mariners is someone that we can consider. Aoki, another option. He's really cheap. I don't know if they raised his price. Let me pull this up real quick. He's 2.6K, so I don't mind him leading off here against the Yankees. So a lot of good options for the Mariners in terms of hitters.
Yeah, definitely agree. I think Nelson Cruz is a guy, always a potential double dong guy. Like he's one of those guys like, Chris Davis is on the list, Chris Carter, these guys with massive power upside. Cruz is always a guy with massive home run upside, so always the potential to get double dongs there. Yep. All right, now looking at the Yankees side of things, Nathan Carnes, not a guy that's really going to overpower too many hitters. A lot of options here for the Yankees. What's your thoughts?
I like these Yankees bats quite a bit. I like them in tournaments. To be more specific for you, I like stacking up this Yankees team. It's a good spot here at home against Carnes. Obviously, a very hitter-friendly ballpark, and you can get a lot of guys with multiple home run upside. Teixeira, McCann. Who else? Even Carlos Beltran. I mean, just a lot of A-Rod. I mean, just a lot of these guys can hit home runs. So I like loading up on teams that can hit home runs. Good spot here. I think overall these guys should all be relatively low owned, and you can get the home run upside. So like the Yankees in tournaments, I think they're a good stack.
Yeah, the only one guy that I think if you're making an optimal lineup or in Hoop's case a cash lineup, Ellsbury, always a guy that I think you can target in that format. 3,500. He has the home run upside, and then he has the stolen base upside as well. He's pretty safe cash game option. Looking at what he's been able to do lately, over 15 fantasy points in 4 of the last 6 games. So pretty safe option, Ellsbury. I think he's cash game playable.
Yep.
But then I agree with what you're saying. There's just so many options in this game. It's definitely a game where I wouldn't be shocked if we see a Yankee stack at the top of a tournament here on the slate. Atlanta at Miami. Good ballpark here for pitchers, but we got Chen against Perez. Chen's an interesting option. He's not a guy that gets hit really hard.
Yeah.
And, he faces a Braves offense outside of Freeman. It's pretty weak.
Yeah, it's definitely very weak. So I think he's interesting. They signed this guy to the contract. They let him start the opening day game. So they have high hopes for him. And like you said, it's a good hitter or good pitcher's ballpark here. The matchup is absolutely phenomenal, just about as good as it possibly gets against this Braves team. They're definitely, I think, when it's all said and done, going to be a bottom 5 offense in baseball. So interesting spot, minus 172 here. Interesting. I mean, if you're going to load up on the bats, there's a lot of top pitchers going tonight. Like we said, we haven't gotten to them yet. We will pretty soon here, but a lot of top pitchers. So a guy like Chen opens up the offensive opportunities. This is how you can stack up some of these more expensive offenses. So very interesting, I think, for tournaments if you're going to fade those bigger guys.
Yeah, the one thing that I don't like about Chen is he's 8K. That kind of hurts. Like, yeah, am I going to pay the extra $2,000 for some of these, top guys, or am I going to go down? So he should be under-owned. It's a good matchup, like you said. If he was like 71 to 75, it'd be like I'd be a lot more interested.
Yeah, if he was hovering around the low 7s, it makes it a lot more interesting. Guy very likely to pick up the win here, at home in this pitcher's park. 8K, yeah, that's a little steep.
Now, looking at the Atlanta bats here against Chen, they're on the road. There's only one guy that stands out to me, and I feel like I'm going to talk about him every podcast, but it's Adonis Garcia. Yeah. He's 2,200. He's batting in the 4 spot. Gets a lefty-righty matchup, and we talked about Chen, but he did allow a 348 WOBA with a 30% hard contact rate to righties last year. Garcia is a guy that can hit him hard, and he continues to hit. He's the one guy. He hasn't shown a lot of power, but he continues to hit.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the price. I mean, on FanDuel, it's 2.2K. I mean, so you can lock him into that third base position there. Makes it easy to pay up for guys like Kershaw, Sale, Greinke, if you want to go that route. There's, he opens up a ton, and he's only 2.2K, like I said. So very interesting, and if I'm going to target a Braves bat, it is certainly going to be him.
I definitely agree. Now, looking at the Miami side of things, Williams Perez, a guy that – he struggled massively with righties and lefties last season. 374 WOBA with a 33% hard contact rate to lefties. Not much better against righties. 336 with a 25% against righties.
Yeah.
This is a good matchup for a lot of these Marlins, and I'm not against a Marlins stack here.
Yeah, I mean, it's a team that's tough to stack up on most nights because they don't have a lot of powerful bats outside of Stanton, obviously. But this situation, Perez is so terrible. I mean, he's an absolutely brutal pitcher, and I don't care that it's a pitcher's park. I'd have no issue loading up. I think this makes Stanton in contention for one of the top overall hitting options on the slate. And like you said, guys like Christian Yelich, I think, are in play. Anyone else that kind of works their way to the top of the order, I think you can definitely consider, and hopefully you get a cheapie up there, get a cheap guy batting maybe in that 2-hole that we can use for some salary relief.
All right, I'm going to throw one at you here. You're a cash game guy. Justin Bour, 2,500 at first base, trying to fit in some of these top pitchers. Good matchup for him here. Is he a guy that you would consider?
If he's betting,
Should bet
fifth,
fifth
yeah,
or
that's what I'm
sixth.
saying. If he's in that fifth five hole, I think definitely. If he's in that six hole, maybe. But five hole, yeah, definitely at 2.6K. I mean, the Perez is terrible. I mean, he's a guy that we've been targeting all last season, this season as well when we get the opportunity. So I can definitely get on board with that.
Yeah, one other name that I want to mention, D. Gordon, always a safe, optimal play. Just potential for stealing bases. We've seen him hit triples this year, doubles. The guy just continues to hit the ball like he did last year. Just one of the best overall hitters as far as average went last year, and just continues to do it this year. So I think he's definitely a guy that, optimal lineup wise, always one of the safer options.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of those guys. He just needs to get on base essentially one time. I mean, we say it with a lot of these guys, but he's the prime example of it. So he gets on base once, he's likely to do enough for an entire game. So I like that call a lot.
Chris Sale visiting Tampa Bay to take on Jake Odorizzi. Nice, pitcher's ballpark here for Chris Sale. And in his recent performances against the Rays, he has dominated them. So the right-handed bats might scare some people off, but what's your thoughts on the overpowered lefty here?
I think he is an absolutely elite tournament option. I would not be opposed to playing him in cash. But you look at the difference in the price tag, 800 more. I'd rather go Kershaw. But that being said, that's going to leave the ownership level a lot lower on a guy like Sale. This is a great spot. You looked up the numbers. If you're into the BVP stuff, he's owned this team. And, obviously they made the addition of Corey Dickerson to their lineup. A great addition, the Rays did. Great addition to the lineup. But he's completely neutralized in this matchup with Chris Sale. I mean, the lefty-lefty matchup, Sale's so dominant against lefties. Neutralizes their top addition to their lineup. So Sale will be much lower owned than Clayton Kershaw. So that makes him just a great tournament option in my eyes.
Yeah, and another thing that I want to mention with Sale, we're early into the season. We don't see this a lot, but 104 and 107 pitches, 7 innings in both of his first 2 starts this season. This is definitely something that you want to note here because his price tag's up there, but if we know he's pretty much going to throw 100 pitches against Tampa, there's 10 strikeout upside here in this matchup. So I was looking up his stats and I saw that, and it's just one thing that really stuck out to me because it is early in the season, and it's nice to see those types of stats this far. That means he's feeling stretched out already, and looks like he's off to a good start here. Now, looking at the Tampa Bay Rays thing, Odorizzi is a guy that I think I'll target here throughout the year at spots, and I think this is a really interesting option for him because, he's not going to be a guy that's probably over 5% owned, and he brings some strikeout upside against a Chicago team that really has 3 guys that you have to worry about.
Yeah, it's an interesting situation with Odorizzi because a lot of times you want to, especially on FanDuel, you want to target pitchers that have a good chance of picking up the win. Obviously, going against Chris Sale, probably not the best opportunity for him to pick up the win. But that being said, this just screams like a game that's going to be a pitcher's duel. Bad hitter's park definitely favors the pitcher. It's just, I don't know. It just definitely has the feel for an absolute pitcher's duel. I think he's a very interesting option. Once again, not a guy to target in cash, but I think really interesting for tournaments. He's going to see Sale out there like he's striking out a lot of batters, fast-paced pitcher. So I think just very interesting tournament option.
Yeah, even though the Rays are pretty good against lefties, I'm not going to find myself on a 14-game slate, targeting any of these Rays against Sale. No. If you're going to do it, then you need to sell yourself on it. You need to take Forsythe, you need to take Longoria, you need to take 4 of these guys and really hope that they get to Sale and they hit him hard, because if you take 2 or 3 of the guys, you're not really going to do anything for yourself. If they, have a bunch of strikeouts and they don't get to them, you're going to lose either way. So if you're going to do a Rays thing and you're going to target Sale, take Susan, take Forsythe, take Longoria, take maybe Desmond Jennings, take 4 of these guys on FanDuel. They're really cheap, and just hope that it happens. But it's not a day that I'm going to be doing that.
Yeah, super low owned. I mean, it's a situation where, don't put a huge chunk of your bankroll on that. If you're playing, the $2 tournament or the $1 tournament on FanDuel and you're building a bunch of teams, give it a shot. It's going to be extremely low owned. I mean, the likelihood of Sale getting rocked is extremely low, but it has happened, and it will happen at some point this season. And when he's getting rocked, the ball is leaving the yard. it's really rare, obviously, for him to get completely rocked like that. But it's going to be a low-owned combination of guys.
Yeah, don't target any of the lefties against Sale. He owns lefties.
No.
Now, looking at the White Sox side of things, Odorizzi, a guy that neutralizes left-handed bats pretty well. Pitches really good against lefties, but gives up some hard contact rate to righties. Higher WOBA, higher home run per 9 against righties. So I think guys like Jose Abreu, Todd Frazier are guys you can target here.
Yeah, and definitely think it can, but it's more so for tournaments. Like I said, cash games, I don't think it's the right play. In tournaments, you can definitely fire away on those guys.
Yeah, nobody in this game that you're going to want to take in cash. Even the pitchers. I think the pitchers are tournament only as well. Yeah. Toronto visiting Boston. My Red Sox taking on the Toronto Blue Jays. R.A. Dickey against Rick Porcello. This is an interesting thing. Porcello, not a guy that I like at all. He pitched really well in the first game against Toronto, and it was really shocking to see, but I just don't see it happening again.
No, absolutely not. And Porcello, he's not a good pitcher, to be honest with you. He's a guy that, looked promising when he first came into the major leagues with the Tigers, a high ground ball rate type pitcher, but, things have not panned out, and obviously pitching here for the Red Sox, absolutely not. I think the Blue Jays bats are in a good spot here. I'd have no problem loading up on them. It's a team, obviously, Blue Jays that explosive offense, capable of going off at any time. So this is a good matchup for them. I think tournaments absolutely fire away on these guys. Going to be hard to get a pitcher. A high caliber pitcher like Kershaw in your lineup if you're stacking up the Blue Jays. But if you're going to go cheaper and build a team, around a Blue Jay stack, I like it.
Yeah, for sure. We got to note that Jose Bautista took Porcello deep twice in the first 3 innings of that game at Rogers Center. It's not like it's a massive downgrade in park. It's still one of those things where, the Rogers Center definitely one of the best ballparks, but it's not like Fenway is a bad place to hit. So not want anything to do with these pitchers. I think you can target a lot of these bats, like you said, Donaldson, Baptista, Edwin and Carcion, Tulo, all these guys, even Pilar at the top of the lineup. A lot of options here for the Blue Jays.
Yeah, absolutely. There's, like you said, a lot of good options, and even on the Boston side of things, a lot of good options. Problem is, these bats are pretty darn expensive. So with this good pitching core we have going tonight, I think a lot of them will be lower owned, and it makes a good opportunity to get some of these bats that typically are highly owned at a low ownership level.
Yeah, and I know BVP's talked about a lot, but especially when it comes to a knuckleball guy, I love to look at it, and the Red Sox have hit Dickey hard. So I think there's a lot of options here for Boston. One name that really stood out to me the most that hits him pretty good is Bogaerts. He has a 367 average against him, and it's 30 bat sample size, and he's hit him hard. So that's a really interesting shortstop play for me.
Yeah, definitely. He's priced up a little bit. People will not pay that price for him. Close to 4K. He is 4K, so he's 4K on FanDuel. People just will not pay that price for him. Going to be extremely low owned, like you said. I'm not a BVP guy, but when somebody's facing a knuckleball pitcher, it's definitely something that I even look at. So definitely some merit there to Bogaerts.
Yep, I like the Red Sox stack. I like the Blue Jays stack. We don't have to spend a lot of time on it. The hitters are in play. Don't target the pitchers. And let's move it on to New York Mets visiting the Cleveland Indians. Bartolo Colon against Cody Anderson. Colon making a start here. Pretty interesting, but it doesn't shock me. Colon probably makes spot starts throughout the year, at least until Wheeler comes back from injury here. But not a guy that I like. Cody Anderson, not a guy that I like. It's an interesting game because the hitters on both sides of the plate here haven't been doing much.
Yeah, two pretty disappointing offenses here. I think a lot of high hopes for the Mets offense as a whole, and it's been relatively disappointing this season. And I know from experience because I've been playing these guys quite a bit, unfortunately, in my cash games, and they really haven't been getting the job done. So definitely no interest in the pitchers. As far as the hitters go, I don't know. I mean, I guess like Lucas Duda is an interesting play. He's 2.5. Actually, yeah, he's more than interesting play. He's 2.5K on FanDuel. I definitely target him at first base. It opens up a lot for your lineup. A guy that has historically hit right-handed pitching really, really well. I know 2 seasons ago he was the 7th overall hitter against right-handed pitching in terms of WOBA. You know, fell off a little bit last season, but been a solid bat against right-handed pitching, you know, throughout his career as a whole. So at 2.5K, probably my favorite play for the Mets. On the Indian side of things, I don't know. Like you said, their offense has just been so brutal. I guess maybe you could take a look at Kipnis. His price should be low. Let's see what it's sitting at.
31.
31. You know, I'd actually prefer it to be a little bit lower, but interesting play. But for me, my favorite bat, definitely Duda.
Yeah, Kipnis is an interesting option. Like you said, Duda is a guy that way underpriced. And Michael Conforto, I think that both him and Duda, they're going to get it going eventually, man. They're just going to get out of this slump. And why not against a guy like, you know, Cody Anderson?
You can throw Granderson in that mix, too. His price dropped quite a bit. He's only 2.9K, so I think he's an interesting option, too.
Yeah, even Neil Walker, we can throw him in there. He's 2.6K.
These guys are super cheap. I mean, they're guys that have solid histories, and they're going to turn it around at some point. Like you said, why not tonight against Anderson?
All right, let's swing it on over. Baltimore at Texas. Martin Perez against Vance Worley, 2 dominant pitchers here. I feel like we're going to have a lot of hitters in the early games and a lot of pitchers in the late games. That's just how this day is setting up. So Perez, Worley, I want nothing to do. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, and there's 0% chance I would ever play either of these guys in any sort of format unless you're playing some sort of low ball format.
Perez, a guy that really struggled with righties last year, 336 WOBA, only a 10% strikeout rate against righties last year. It's going to see a lot of righties in this Baltimore lineup. What's your thoughts on some of these Orioles bats?
Yeah, in a good spot, and you know, I think it's safe to target quite a few of them. First one that pops off for me is Wieters, a guy that's hit left-handed pitching really well throughout his career. You know, won't get the best lineup spot, likely hit 6, you know, maybe 5th, has a nice price on FanDuel. So, yeah, definitely like him. Adam Jones returned to the lineup tonight. So he's a guy that we can consider. Machado, I think, is a good tournament option, kind of priced out for cash, I think. He's up there at 4.7K. I mean, that's a lot to pay, especially with these pitchers that we have going tonight. So Wieters, definitely probably my favorite option here for the Orioles.
Yeah, one other name I want to throw out there, Joey Rickard, I guess is his name.
Yeah,
2,600 against a matchup with a lefty that doesn't have a big strikeout rate. Seems really safe for a cash game option here at his price tag, batting leadoff.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, he should continue to bat leadoff. He has, you know, nonstop here. So 2.6K, one of the higher totals on the slate. Definitely a guy that we can consider. Yeah,
and it's at Texas, so it's a good ballpark to target some bats here. Now, looking at the other side of things, Vance Worley, I get so tilted with Worley because, you know, he'll go out and he'll get rocked and then he'll go out and have a decent game. And he just seems like one of those types of pitchers, but this is definitely a game that I think you can target guys like Prince Fielder, Odor, some of these lefty, even that, what is it, Marza?
Yeah, batting second. He appears to be locked into that 2-hole. He was 2.7 on FanDuel. I don't know if the price went up at all.
Still is.
Still 2.7. I think, definitely targeting him. I mean, they're committed to this guy. So, I mean, as long as he's batting second, 2.7K, definitely consider him.
Now, what's your thoughts on guys like Mitch Moreland and Prince Fielder?
Prince Fielder, I definitely like. Has a pretty cheap price. He's 3.3K. That's very reasonable. Mitch Moreland, I like a little bit more for tournaments. So I think Fielder in cash games, Mitch Moreland in tournaments. Moreland's 2.7K with outfielder eligibility. So you know, there's a lot of good guys to target here in terms of offense.
Yeah, I like this game a lot. I think it's definitely a game you could target. Angels at Minnesota, Garrett Richards, Tom Malone. Garrett Richards is an interesting option here at Minnesota. $8,700 price tag is up there a little bit, but I think he's an interesting tournament option against the Twins offense that really hasn't shown us much.
Yeah, so that's the main thing. If you're a believer in hot, cold streaks in baseball, I mean, this is a good spot to target a pitcher that's facing an offense that has been ice cold to start the season. I think, in terms of most measures, I mean, they're at the bottom of Major League Baseball. In their team that typically has had better success against lefties opposed to righties, so I think it's a good spot for him. Another guy to add to the list of tournament options. Low owned tournament options gets you the opportunity to spend up at some of these other positions where people will be spending down to pay up at pitcher. So interesting option here, definitely.
Yeah, I wish he was a little cheaper on maybe like a site like DraftKings as an SB2, but other options around his price tag where I think we'll lean that way. Tom Malone, the lefty, getting the matchup with Trout and Pujols. Tough matchup for Malone here. What's your thoughts on these bats in general in this game?
Well, obviously, Mike Trout is always a guy to consider no matter what. He gets a lefty here. Great spot for him. I think that puts him in contention for one of the top overall hitters on the slate. Like the other guys that we've talked about, he'll be lower owned than he typically is because we have these expensive pitchers going tonight. So definitely consider him. I think the more interesting cash game type play is a guy like Albert Pujols. He's coming in at
3K.
3K. That's a very reasonable price, and you can roster him and still pay up at pitcher. So for cash games, I think Pujols definitely interesting. In tournaments, I think Trout's the guy to go to.
Yeah, Pujols, a guy that I really think you could target in tournament or in cash games. Just 3K, gets a good matchup against a soft tossing lefty. Now, what are your thoughts on Yunel Escobar? Batting at the top of the order here, notoriously better against lefties than righties, and he's been stringing together a bunch of hits together here.
I liked him better when he was cheaper. He's up to 3K now, so I think that's a little out of the range I feel comfortable paying for Yunel Escobar. But that being said, he's been hitting well. Just pulling it up, he's had multiple, at least a hit in five straight games, 8 hits in his last 5. That's a very nice number. Once again, if you believe in hot streaks, this is a guy to target. He's been on fire. The price has adjusted up though a little bit.
Now, I don't want anything to do with these Minnesota bats. So no, maybe in a tournament, but they're really ice cold.
Oh yeah, I mean, really, really bad. I mean, it's pretty pathetic what's going on. So, probably best to avoid those bats. And if another team that's going to be extremely low owned, so maybe some tournament upside, but I don't know. They've been really bad.
All right, Detroit, your Tigers visiting the Houston Astros here. Dallas Keuchel, lefty against Detroit, very interesting here. And then Mike the Lips Pelfrey. Oh, Jesus. Man, how is this guy still in baseball? But he is.
Not only is he in baseball, but the Tigers decided to give him $8 million a year, which is even more impressive.
All right, let's talk Dallas Keuchel here. We have a bunch of studs on the mound, and I feel like he's going to go overlooked quite a bit going against the Tigers. Is that for good reason, or is he a guy you think you might want to target?
No, I don't have interest. I mean, this got to be one of the worst matchups for him, and I'm not trying to be a homer by any means. I mean, the Tigers have a lineup built to destroy right-handed pitching. This is just, I think, a brutal spot for him, and I wouldn't target him in any format. On the other hand, I think the Tigers' bats are very interesting because they have the guys that can get it done against lefties. The ballpark is super favorable. So I like the Tigers' bats a lot in tournaments. Keuchel, guy had a phenomenal season last year, but he does have blow-up potential in certain spots. I mean, if there's a spot he's going to blow up, it's definitely in this matchup against a Tigers team that's right-handed heavy with power. So I like these Tigers bats a lot in tournaments.
Yeah, definitely for good reason. Keuchel is a guy that I like to target. He's a guy we use quite a bit here in fantasy, but a lefty versus Detroit, like you said, 1 through 6, all these guys can hit left-handed pitching. So. Yeah. Victor Martinez is expected back in the lineup here, with the DH being – it's just there's going to be, 6 really good hitters in a row that Keuchel's going to have to face. And doing that 2 or 3 times, he's just bound to get hit up, eventually. So
tough spot, real tough spot.
So it had nothing to do with you being a homer. It's just one of those things. So now on the other side of things, Mike Pelfrey, 374, but with a 33% or 31% hard contact rate to lefties last year. Dude, give me Colby Rasmus in cash games. He's 3,800, but he's one guy that I think you can pay up for here.
Not only you threw out those numbers, that's phenomenal, but the Tigers rewarded him with $8 million a year. I mean, it hits home, man. It hits home. It's sad. It hurt when I saw that signing. If I know, in DFS, if everybody knows, the most novice player knows to take hitters against Mike Pelfrey, why the $8 million a year is so unnecessary. Just bring some guy up from the minors and let him pitch. I mean, it'll be much better. Load up on these Astros bats. Absolutely. Rasmus, like you said, phenomenal play. Altuve, Springer, Correa. I mean, all of them in play. Great spots. White, the guy batting fifth, he appears to be locked into that 5-hole. He's 3.2K. A lot of good plays here. Righty, lefty, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, one thing that we want to note, Evan Gattis is back from the DL. That should actually push probably Preston Tucker out of the lineup. It looks like Gattis probably is going to DH more than he's going to play the field this year. Gattis, an interesting option at catcher at 2,500 with multiple home run upside. I think he's an excellent tournament play here in this game.
Yeah, if he's in there, he'll be low owned because, like you said, he'll probably hit like 7th, maybe even 8th. No one's going to be on him. So I like that call a lot. Like you said, multiple home run upside. That's what we want for tournaments.
Yeah, like I said, love a lot of bats in this game. This is definitely a game you can target bats in. Cincinnati visiting the Cardinals. Carlos Martinez versus Tim Melville. Melville getting another start here. Desclafini still on the DL, so he's making progress, but it looks like Melville's going to get another chance here. Wasn't great in that first start. Walked 4 batters, gave up 5 hits, 5 Ks, only pitched 4 innings. And I think this is definitely a matchup that you can target Carlos Martinez on a second pitcher site, and you can target some bats here against Melville.
Yeah, you nailed it perfectly. I mean, I definitely like Carlos Martinez. I think if I'm going to go cheap at pitcher and save some money, I think he's the guy that I might do it with. It just seems like such a safe spot for him to pick up the win. Cardinals, just our team, they just play so well at home. And, it just makes it so likely for their pitchers to pick up the win. Just a very steady guy. So I like him quite a bit. And like you said, Melville is a guy that we definitely want to pick on. They finally raised the price of our dude in the outfield. He was 2.3K forever. What the hell's his name?
Hazelbaker, 3,100 finally.
Yeah, they finally jacked him up. So you got the $800 price bump that will get people off him. I think he's still a good play. I mean, he seems to be a solid player. So I still like him. 3.1K. Whoever bats cleanup, they've been playing around with Moss and Adams. I think both those guys are in play, pretty cheap. Both of them, if I am correct. Let's pull that up. Adams 2.1K, Moss 3K. So if Adams gets in there at cleanup, I like him a lot.
Yeah, Hazelbaker. I'm gonna keep playing him. He's just a guy that
dong today.
Yeah, he just keeps hitting like over 18 fantasy points in 6 of the last 7 games, and it's not sustainable. The guy can steal bases. He's shown some pop. He has 3 home runs now.
I mean, how do the Cardinals continue to find guys of this caliber? It seems like it's just, next guy up, and he's awesome.
Yeah, there's maybe like 4 or 5 like teams in baseball that just have, just so many stars at their AAA and AA level. And shout out to Luis Cards. Last year, he went to a game over in Memphis and seen the Redbirds play, and he said that Hazelbaker was the real deal last year. So here is, a year later, and he's a guy that we're rostering every day. I'm not going to target too many bats here against Carlos Martinez. No. St. Louis is not the place that I want to target bats. So honestly, outside of a tournament, Votto and Bruce, probably it for me, but tournament, option only and not a lot of options.
Yeah, absolutely. You don't want to really pick on Carlos Martinez, especially when he's at home. I don't see much upside here. I mean, maybe a Joey Votto, Jay Bruce, but I mean, not super excited about either of those guys. Billy Hamilton, if he's leading off, I think a solid play.
Yeah, always a guy. All you need him to do is get on base one time. Bunch of upside once he gets on base. Kansas City at Oakland, O.co, one of the best places to target pitchers. And Edinson Volquez off to a really good start this season. And I think we need to talk about him for a second because he's looked good in 2 starts now.
He looks good, and he's facing an offense that's looked like complete dog shit. So it's a pretty good combination there. Oakland A's offense just looks pitiful at this point in the season. They have guys in the lineup I think that can hit left-handed pitching pretty well. Billy Burns good against the lefties. Valencia, Chris Davis, all guys that hit left-handed pitching well. Facing a righty here, and I think he's an interesting option. Like you said, he's been pitching well, and he gets a good matchup here and in a good pitcher's ballpark. So a lot going in his favor. Very interesting. 8.1K though. I mean, that's a little bit tough on FanDuel, but if you're playing on a 2-pitcher site, I think pretty intriguing.
Yeah, he's 7,600 on DraftKings. He's probably going to be really popular in cash games over there on DraftKings tonight. So definitely a guy. I think he's FanDuel eligible. Like, he's not a guy that I'm going to overlook. He has one of the best bullpens in baseball behind him, so he has that going for him. And another thing he has going for him, over 103 pitches in both of his first 2 starts. So, like I said with Sale, it's always nice to see guys throwing over 100 pitches. 10 strikeouts against Minnesota. That just shows how cold Minnesota is. Now, looking at the other side of things here, Rich Hill, he was a guy that was talked about a lot before the season. Didn't know too much about him. I know he was with Cleveland Indians for a little bit, but he dominated Seattle in his last start. 6 innings pitched, 1 earned run, 5 hits against 10 strikeouts.
Yeah. That's certainly impressive. I mean, 10 strike. I mean, that's a big time number. Definitely not going to get the 10 against the Royals. I mean, if this was a different spot, I could definitely see some validity, but it's the Royals. I mean, they just don't strike out a ton. So different spot, absolutely. This spot against the Royals, I mean, I'm going to pass in all formats, but if this was the Twins coming to Oakland, a team that's just struggling, maybe I could get on board with it. But the fact that he's facing the Royals, I mean, it's probably just about the least appealing matchup possible.
Yeah, I was trying to sell you there. I don't like Rich Hill either. I don't target.
Not taking your bait.
Yeah, I tried, but I don't target pitchers against Kansas City. It's just not a smart thing to do over the course of a season. Lorenzo Cain against a lefty here, 4K, really interesting tournament option. Just so much better against lefties than he is against righties. One of my top overall plays today.
Yeah, it'll be a low-owned play because he's up there. I mean, the price is up there, but he has produced. I mean, and he's been very, very productive on FanDuel. He's sitting at 4K. I mean, that's high up there, and people are not going to pay that price for him. One of the better hitters against left-handed pitching last season, so I think there's a lot of appeal to him in tournament. Going to be a really low-owned. He always goes low-owned.
Yeah, I definitely agree. He's always, like you said, always the guy that's overlooked. And one other name that kind of stands out to me that as another low-owned option, and his price tag actually, helps that. But a guy like Morales, he was not bad against lefties last year. 298 average. He hit 4 home runs out of his 22 against lefties, and it's an interesting option as another cheap first base play.
Yeah, a guy no one plays. I mean, no one plays him in good matchups. In really good appealing matchups, people don't play him. So another low-owned option, like you said.
All right, Marcus Semien, home runs now in 3 of the last 4 games. Tough matchup here against Valquez. What's your thoughts on the Oakland Bats? Because I know how I feel about them tonight.
I'm passing all around. I mean, the only guy I'd consider maybe would be maybe Josh Reddick, but outside of him, I don't like anyone. Certainly not in cash games, and like I said, Reddick in tournaments. That's about it.
Yeah, Reddick is the only guy I'm looking at. Valquez is a guy that really allowed a high hard contact rate to lefties last year. So Reddick, a guy with a nice ISO against right-handed pitching. If I was going to target anybody, it's going to be him. I'm not targeting too much here. Another game that we're not going to target many hitters from. Clayton Kershaw against Madison Bumgarner, San Francisco heading to Los Angeles. We just seen this matchup, and if you believe in BVP, then you definitely have to worry about Bumgarner taking Kershaw deep.
Yeah, geez, absolutely incredible, and the look on Kershaw's face in the comments just priceless, awesome. Yeah, you're not going to target any hitters here. You're definitely going to want to take a look at Kershaw. And, we talked about it before we hopped on here. It seems like every time the Giants and Dodgers square off in a series, these two end up facing each other. But Kershaw is just in a league of his own right now in terms of starting pitchers in baseball. The sites have priced him up on DraftKings. What was it, 13.7K?
Yeah, he is really expensive. Kershaw is, like you said,
13.7 on FanDuel. He's 12.8. Actually, probably still easier to play on DraftKings opposed to FanDuel because you can go with a cheaper SP2 to kind of balance it out. But that being said, he's in a league of his own. You can definitely make it work. There's a lot of cheap plays. We've talked about a lot of those cheap guys throughout the podcast here. So if you want to play the guy, definitely the top ranked pitcher. Anytime he takes the mound, he's going to be the top option. No different tonight. You can make it work. So, there's just not much more to say about him. He's phenomenal.
Yeah. Pitcher versus batter versus pitcher, however you want to say it. It just goes to show these two teams face each other a lot. Kershaw and Bumgarner face each other a lot. Kershaw, 341 at-bats against the current hitters for the Giants. 164 average with only 3 home runs given up. And then Bumgarner, on the other hand, 210 at-bats with a 214 average. These two guys are the two best pitchers probably on the slate and probably two of the best 3 pitchers in baseball. So they're pitching against each other, which always makes it interesting, but they're both in play. If I had to pick one, I'm going to go Kershaw just because he is Clayton Kershaw.
Yeah.
But, okay, so we're looking on FanDuel here, and the win is just so important now that it's 12 points. It's just one of those things where you almost need a win.
Yeah.
If you had to pick a winning pitcher here, I'm going to put you on the spot. Is it going to be Kershaw or Bumgarner?
Oh, Kershaw for sure. I mean, like the guy's in a league of his own. I mean, he's just a phenomenal pitcher. Still, I mean, going against Bumgarner. Bumgarner is a really good pitcher. Vegas has this pegged in Kershaw's favor minus 165. I mean, that's solid. That's a solid favorite against a really good opposing pitcher. So it's definitely Kershaw. There's just no doubt about it.
Yeah, so not going to target bats here, but I do want to note that Crawford's dealing with a hip injury. Justin Turner was out of the lineup, but he expects to be back in the lineup on Friday. And then Joe Panik is dealing with a hip injury as well. He's considered day-to-day, so you want to pay attention to those names. But honestly, I don't want anything to do with the bats here. It's just not a spot.
No. There's been a lot of situations, like I said, early on in the podcast, it was all about the hitters. A lot of hitters in good spots, really poor pitching. Now we're at the back end of the slate here, and it's a lot of good pitchers, no hitting. There's not much upside. I mean, sure, you're going to get a guy that might be less than 1% owned, if you target any of these hitters, but the chances of them doing enough damage to win you a GPP is so low. So it's definitely not worth it in my eyes.
All right, I'm going to put you on the spot, Mike. You have to take one hitter out of this game. One guy. It could be from either team. Who would it be?
If I'm taking one hitter, it's going to be Yasiel Puig.
All right. Yeah, Puig was one of the guys. And then if I had to take one guy out of this game, it'd be Kiki Hernandez. Enrique Hernandez, 2,300.
Batting lead
should
off.
bat lead off.
Yeah.
And has some good history against Bumgarner. A little BBP going his way, but
you always have to throw that in there, right, buddy?
Yeah, I just had to throw it in there. I wasn't gonna tell the numbers 7 for 13 with the home run and 3 doubles. But
oh, damn! Now we're talking.
So, all right, we're not gonna talk about that game a lot. Let's move on to the final game of the night. And to be honest with you, we haven't talked about Zach Greinke this year. 2 starts at home, and I think at home he's gonna be tough to target because Chase Field, man, he just hasn't looked good in his first 2 starts. No. But he gets the Padres at Petco in this game. James Shields on the other side of the hill. What's your thoughts here on Zach Greinke? Only 10-4 on FanDuel.
Yeah, this is like the most interesting situation on the slate here. You get Zach Greinke, got the huge contract with Arizona. Has looked awful in his first 2 starts. Absolutely terrible. Now he gets to face probably – this might be the worst offense I've seen in the last few years. Like, honestly, this offense is terrible. They're swinging at everything, just completely missing. They let this Vasquez guy get like 15 strikeouts today. Just pitiful, just a pitiful offense. I mean, Melvin Upton batting like 4th and 5th. It's just a bad offense. It's an interesting spot here. I mean, you have to imagine Greinke is going to get it together here. He was a great pitcher last year for the Dodgers. The ballpark here, extremely favorable for pitchers. I think he's very, very interesting option. I mean, I'm tempted to pull the trigger in cash games, but it's tough with Kershaw going. I think he's just a great, just really, really good tournament option. Really good.
Yeah, I'm going to go one up on you. I think he's the top pitching option on the board today.
Get out of here! No, you can't. You can't. No,
I'm
can't.
giving him the edge over Kershaw.
Can't let you do that.
Yep, gonna do it.
I can't.
Jelly bean bet.
That is not that's not legal on this podcast. It's your podcast. I'm telling you, it's not legal.
It is legal. San Diego.
I guess you make the rules. I'm just here for fun.
San Diego is awful. Like so you said, that offense. Melvin Upton is in the 4 spot. It is that bad. That lineup is that bad.
It's atrocious. It's bad. Like, it is so. I mean, they just let 2 back-to-back pitchers for the Phillies. Keep in mind, the Philadelphia Phillies back-to-back pitchers had career outings against this team. So, all right, maybe I went a little overboard telling you couldn't do it, but I don't know.
I do what I want anyway. But all right, so. We're looking at the numbers here for Greinke. He's pitched 10 innings this season. He's given up 11 earned runs. His walk rate is still down. He's only walked 4 guys. And in the game against the Cubs in his last outing, he struck out 8 people. So we've seen some flashes of brilliance there in that last game.
Yeah.
The thing is, he's allowed a 43% hard contact rate in first 2 games of the season, facing Colorado and facing the Cubs. Those are 2 decent, Colorado's decent. Chicago has a really good offense.
Yeah.
Greinke, looking at his numbers last year, just phenomenal. It's going to come, and it's going to come here in this game. And I think that he strikes out at least 7. He pitches 7 innings here, and he picks up the win, maybe even not giving up a run.
Yeah, it's as good of a bounce back spot as you could possibly imagine. If you're a struggling pitcher, you want to face the Padres in Petco. There's just not a better situation in baseball right now. So, yeah, I mean, I can see it. I still have Kershaw ranked a little bit above him, but great spot. Great spot.
You got to factor in. You got to factor in the $2,800 that you get savings from Kershaw to Greinke as well. Or no, it's $2,400, but it couldn't have been a better thing that Greinke got rocked in his first 2 starts. As a player like me, that I'm 100% gonna be like, all right, I'll play him. I don't care. If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But he's definitely the guy that I want here. Now, James Shields, on the other hand, massive numbers against lefties last year. 380 WOBA, 33% hard contact. Yeah. So you got to like guys like David Peralta and Lamb and Brito here in this Arizona lineup. Yeah,
very interesting. We'll be low on. I mean, the total here at 6.5 will keep the ownership percentages on these guys down quite a bit. I like them. Yeah, Shields, a guy that really struggled with home runs. He struck out a ton of guys last season, but when he wasn't striking guys out, the ball was leaving the yard. So I like those guys you mentioned, and Peralta I think is very interesting. Going to be another guy really low on. People just won't target bats here. Get you a low on guy that definitely has a home run upside. So I can get on board. Peralta is probably my favorite bat here in tournaments in this game.
Yeah, and I want nothing to do with the Padre bats here.
Oh my God, man! Who would you potentially even target? Like, honestly, if you were going to target one guy, like, where would you go?
If I had to target one guy, it'd probably be Spangenberg. Like, he's the one guy that I find myself rostering him way too much.
If that Wallace dude is hitting cleanup, I mean, maybe him. But, no, you never want to do it. I mean, this is an all-time terrible lineup.
I agree. All right, well, that pretty much wraps it up for the slate here. And, Hoop, I'm up 1-0 on you.
Really?
I got a home run Monday. You didn't get a home run.
That's crap.
1-0 here, so we'll get it going again. I'll even give you, honor the code here, and I'll give you first pick again. I'll let you go with the chalk guy.
Are we excluding the early game?
Yeah, let's take out the early game just because most people are going to be playing the late slate.
Yeah, all right. So I'm gonna go Colby Rasmus.
Colby Rasmus.
That's kind of like contrarian, right?
No, that's just phenomenal. He was definitely one of the guys on my list. Right. I like Rasmus a lot. I'm gonna have to go with my boy, man. Team Peralta, David Peralta. Love the matchup.
That's definitely contrarian.
So definitely a guy that I want. I'll let you have the next pick. You're down one. I got to give you an advantage.
Yeah, you got to help me out. I'm gonna go chalky with Stanton.
Oh, that's pretty chalky. I'm glad you're going on a limb here. But since you're going to do that, I'm going to have to go to my guy, Bryce Harper against
Oh,
Hellickson
yeah.
here.
It's a good call. I'm gonna bounce back with a guy that we both love quite a bit, and that is Big Poppy.
Man, you stole my thunder. I thought I could
Sorry.
sneak him by you.
Had to
I've
do
had
it.
him. I've had him almost every day that I've done this now. But
No.
since you're, you know,
I'm a secondary Boston fan. You can't get that one past me.
all right. So I'm gonna go ultra contrarian here. Probably you can call it crazy. I'm helping you out. That's all I'm gonna say. And I'm gonna go Kiki Hernandez off Bumgarner.
Nice.
So
I like it.
I'll let you. I'll let you.
I mean, there's BVP there, though. I mean, come on now.
You got to live by the code. You know, you got to live by the code. But
Yeah.
you know, David Peralta 4 for 8 with 2 home runs off Shields too. So, all right. So
yeah, you BVP. You know what?
well, it is what it is, and people are loving this segment where we talk about a pitcher that we think is going to win their game. I'll let you lead it off here. Like I said before, it doesn't necessarily need to be a guy that's going to score a lot of fantasy points. Just a guy that you think is going to pick up a win at the end of the day.
Going Chen. Going non-chalk. Non-chalk.
No, I love that. Now, I don't know if mine's chalky, but mine's going to be Carlos Martinez. I think he's going to pick up the win here against Cincinnati
That's
at home.
chalk. That's super chalk.
Well, we've talked about so many pitchers on this show.
I know.
Volquez, if you want to go, is that still chalk?
No, that's not chalk.
Okay. Well, I'll give you 2 there. Whatever. 2 to your 110. So, Hoop, I'm sure we'll see you on Grinders Live before I talk to you again.
Yes,
Appreciate you joining me as always, my friend. Good luck this weekend, and I'll talk to you again soon.
Yes, sir. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man, for sure. That's going to wrap it up here for the morning grind. If you guys haven't known or haven't checked it out yet, check out that promo on the forums and make sure you check out the NASCAR stuff that we'll be doing live from the track at Bristol this weekend. I'll be there if you want anything, pictures or anything like that. Be able to get you anything you want. And we'll be doing a special Periscope on Sunday live from the track, probably in the garage area at some point, and answering any questions that you have. So, that is going to do it for the morning grind, and we will see you again on Monday.